Alright everyone, these days more and more people are employed in what you could say is in a sense that's not under a normal work contract, but is really under like the TOS of websites. There's a huge number of people that at least part-time and to some degree create content. As far as entertainment goes, there's really no reason for the standard entertainment industry like TV and movies like in the classical sense to really even exist anymore. They're vestigial because this is so entertaining. When you can get a person to make content that potentially millions of people will pay attention to, or at least like hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, they're doing it for free as far as a company goes. If that content remains interesting and continues to advance technologically, as we've seen, there's a huge difference, like just looking at video making, like on YouTube. The specifications involved with the resolution, the audio, the buffering speed, the editing capabilities of users and so forth in the late 2000s versus now, there's no comparison whatsoever. I'm considered backwards with regards to some of these things. I've still got to fine-tune my system, but at least I'm in 60 FPS, so, you know, I don't look like I've got a ghost trailing everything I do anymore. That's an improvement, I suppose. I think the audio's better now. I've moved the microphone. That seems to have mostly solved my fan sound issue. I don't have exactly a perfect setup in this location. We'll figure it out as we go. But anyway, I came to a conclusion. There's a new reason that we need to crack down on internet censorship, and that's that TOS at this point are basically the new work contract for some millions of people, not just in the US, but worldwide. The number of creators who have obtained audiences large enough so that it's bringing in some degree of like what we would consider at the very least like a minimum wage sort of income, a livable situation where at the very least they can buy their food and pay for a room with a roommate or something. The number of people who fall into that category or moving up through have a decent existence has increased significantly over time, and it's not just, by the way, the e-celebdom side of things. Like, we would think of major YouTubers. If a YouTuber has millions of subscribers, they can probably make at least somewhat of a living off of that. If they're selling merchandise, if they're taking crowdfunding, ad revenue, any of these things, at the point you hit 1 million subscribers, I'm looking at my metrics now, I'm at about 400,000. If I had 1 million subscribers instead of 400,000, the amount of income from that would be in and of itself above, I believe, the median income. It rides close when you're at my level, so I have to assume that if your audience is engaged at all, like if you have, you know, you have an army of spoon clankers or the 9-year-old army of PewDiePie or whatever sort of thing going on, you've branded yourself beyond just, oh, I plop these videos on here, maybe people give a shit. If you've built a brand at all, probably you'd be at that level. The number of people in that club has grown exponentially. Then you've got people like Instagram influencers, people who have, you know, people who literally look at their pictures and then comment on them. I don't quite get it, but some people are into that. Or people that are just generally social media famous in some meaningful way. People who do self-publishing. Again, this is my main income is self-publishing via Amazon predominantly. The number of people who have self-published books of their own authorship or who edit books or whatever and have made considerable amounts doing that is fairly high at this point. 10 years ago was fairly low. The number of people, I mean, you've never heard of like a POD star. Oh, this is our new self-published author. He sold 10,000 copies of his new memoir, How I Self-Published This Book, ha. It just wasn't really a thing. Now it's relatively common. A lot of people do this sort of thing. It was funny because some crazy liberal on I think the Bernie page a few days ago was whining about not being able to get a book published and how it was white privilege. It's about it was like a Being Black sort of book. And I was like, use POD, and I actually got dogpiled. Like I was making a joke. I'm like, no, use Amazon. You can self-publish it. You can do it in a week, dude, if you've already written the book. If you've already got the files, all you have to do is convert them and format them and stuff. Find someone to quickly go through and proofread your work and slap it on Amazon. Dude, you can absolutely do that. I'll edit your book about how you're black and hate Trump. I'll edit it gladly. I'll do it for free. Just for the shits and giggles, dude. Anyway, you've got a situation where a significant proportion, a number of people that's greater than in some countries in this world, make at least a sizable amount of income on the internet doing their own thing, self-employed. This, economically, while this is not like the majority of the GDP of a nation or something, do we not go out of our way, in the West especially, to protect industries that have become important to some degree? Do we not attempt to make sure that those industries can continue uninhibited? Of course we do. We've got probably 1,000 pages of regulations just involving the U.S. cheese industry, let alone, dairy in general. At what point are we going to do that, therefore, for the self-published crowd, in literary sense, the self-promoted crowd, the self-branded people of the internet? At what point are those millions of people going to have any form of protection against being dropped because they had a wrong political opinion? Dropped because they said something 10 years ago that's no longer fashionable? Dropped because they covered too many taboo topics and the website gets antsy about their presence? At what point are we going to utilize some degree, some type of system? It doesn't even necessarily have to be laws. At what point is something going to be done to protect these people? This happy club that I'm a member of because I'm self-published and self-branded. At what point am I going to have, since essentially the TOS of the websites I associate with are like a work contract. This is my work. This is my day job. Making videos, making books, finding interesting things to do that can be potentially recorded or written about. My garden becomes part of my job at that point. At what point are my tomatoes going to be protected, dude? I want Donald Trump to come and see my garden, declare it huge, put up a sign that says this garden can't be deplatformed. Is that too much to ask? Being slightly hyperbolic there. He can come by the garden anytime. I don't know what vegetables he likes. I'll try to plant them ahead of time. Maybe he likes artichokes. If I had to guess, I think he's the kind of dude who would like root crops like beets and carrots and stuff. Just taking a wild guess. My mom makes great potato pancakes. I'll plant some of those. They're tasty. I know he mainly gets his potatoes in McDonald's French fry form. I don't think McDonald's would buy my potatoes though. They're organic, therefore bad. They want theirs genetically engineered. Definitely not heirloom varieties. Anyway, yeah, I think that at this point, basic protections, like we've got the liberals, for example, in the United States. This is the funny irony. They're constantly whining about unions, worker protections, the little people, minimum wage, not being able to fire people, even if, in some cases, like if they're a teacher, they're not even supposed to be fired if they're diddling the kids, according to some liberals. And they're sacred, they're perfect, teachers can do no wrong. At what point are those same workers' protections in some roundabout or limited way going to be applied to the millions of people that are self-employed online? Dude, in the United States, we get abused with a 15% tax that replaces some other form of taxation on normal workers, but at a higher rate for a lot of us. 15% on top that we have to pay. There's no employer contribution. There's no protection on that. We have no protection under contract laws. We can be essentially fired. If your job is self-published on Amazon, Amazon can fire you and it doesn't even need a reason. And Twitter and some of these sites have literally refined their TOS now to explicitly state that, oh yeah, you make your money by pitching your merchandise mainly on Twitter because you got 10 million followers there and you're a big-time influencer on Twitter and you post pictures of your cats or whatever. Well, fuck you. We can fire you at any time, drop 95% of your income. This is becoming a problem for a substantial enough number of people. If this were a different industry that didn't involve self-employment, if it were an organized industry, it would already be protected. These TOS changes would already be probably argued against in court. They would already be attacked in court by individuals belonging to that industry. I just figured I would point this out. And censorship is always bad. It's morally wrong. It's pragmatically wrong. It's ethically wrong. It's historically wrong. It's always malevolent. It has never been used for anything good in the history of censorship goddamn fucking existing. It's always unhelpful. It's an economic impediment to the self-employed at this point, and it should be gone. The concept that the Western world was built by systems that are even tenable with the concept of corporate censorship, I think is laughable. Of course it wasn't. It was built by people who deliberately avoided such things and considered them toxic. They considered them poisonous. Yes, that includes allowing people who have what you would consider violent or vile ideologies to speak. By the modern standards employed by the pro-censorship crowd, most of what was said by people, normal functioning citizens in the Founders' era, would have been considered toxic. They would have been considered bigoted and violent and ethnocentric and imperialistic. That's what they would have been considered. Oh my God, look, what's George Washington over there? What's he saying about black people and Native Americans? Oh my God. Oh, did you hear what Jefferson said about his slaves? Did you hear what Adams said about his wife or his wives or whatever? Oh my God, look at all the guns they have. Military grade too. Like the British tried to take them away. They should have just listened to their good British government, not rock the boat too much. They should have stayed quiet. That's what would have happened. These people are clueless. Censorship is always bad, but it becomes extra bad when you've got it may not even be 1% of the population. It's probably 1 or 2% of the employed population, though, at this point, ironically, that makes at least some decent income. It doesn't even have to be your main job. You're a night janitor, but you also make YouTube videos about being a night janitor. You make, your extra $10K a year. That's a significant amount of money. It may not sound that way to a politician who's worth $10 million, but $10K is decent. 10K is a lot. That's like a decent used car. That's like, a down payment on something major, like an RV or something. That's an acre of land in some parts of the country. That's meaningful. It means something to a person, a private citizen who's not rich. They're in the working or the middle class. I think that they deserve some degree of protection in the work that they do. I think I deserve some degree of protection when you spend more than a decade creating content and you've built a brand for yourself, but you get into a situation where you could have said something 9 years ago that can get you banned cross-platform. That becomes a problem. It doesn't make any sense for it to be structured that way. Of course, the corporations have no problem with it because they can always replace you with someone who's astroturfed, somebody who's under contract but pretends to be independent who's really not. Somebody who got a bunch of money up front to make a bunch of videos on certain subjects and to act like they're independent, or by a corporation. But if that were happening in any other industry, literally any other business in the world, the liberals would be the ones mainly attacking it. The conservatives would say, well, it's okay, it's private business and stuff. That's what would happen. That's about all. Peace out.